Welcome to Slow Night Ancient Tales. Take a deep breath and let the burdens of the day fade away. Tonight, we leave the noisy world behind and step into a quiet, undiscovered forest. Our story is The Mountain by the classic Korean author Hyo-seok. Imagine the scent of burning autumn leaves, the warmth of a campfire, and a sky overflowing with stars. Close your eyes, settle in, and let the tale begin. The Mountain, author Hyo-seok, Part A. Resting his hands from gathering wood, Joong-sil lifted a hazelnut bush by his feet. Hazelnuts, falling abundantly, rolled into his hands. The fully ripened seasonal fruit cracked into two pieces with a crunch between his molars. The clear sky, looking as though it would shatter with a crunch like a hazelnut if a stone were thrown at it, was as blue as a fish's back. Clusters of high-floating clouds gathered closely on one side, unusually resembling seashells scattered on a beach. Because it was a high mountain ridge, the sky should have felt closer, but it seemed just as far as when viewed from the village. Was it 90,000 miles or 100,000 miles away? In the valley, it felt as if he could touch it just by climbing the foothills, but upon reaching the mountain's waist, the autumn sky seemed to stretch 90,000 miles away at once. The morning in the mountain was desolate like a dozing beast, yet its breath was subtle. The gently curved mountain ridge was the back of a lying ox, and the ceaselessly fluttering aspen leaves were the mountain's breathing, even when there was no breeze. The white powdered birch trees, the first to catch the eye, were the mountain's greatest beauty. How could even the most adorned person's skin be that white? The densely packed trees outnumbered the villagers and had more seeds than human surnames. They grew well, silently and robustly, without a care. Alder, water alder, oak, sawtooth oak, birch, Mongolian oak, a quiet yet bustling, beautiful world. The fresh energy and fragrance like fruit, the scent of wood, the smell of earth, the fragrance of the sky, scents that could not be found in the village. Buried in the fallen leaves, diligently cracking hazelnuts, Joong-sil did not newly ponder the fragrance, observe the trees, or gaze at the sky. All these things merged, soaking his entire body, and he simply felt them without realizing it. The mountain and his body were seamlessly intertwined. Without knowing when, his eyes were dyed with the blue sky, and his skin was permeated with the mountain's scent. Buried in the soft bedding of leaves, hazelnut, oak, and sawtooth oak leaves piled several feet deep, softer than straw dust during threshing, he felt as though his body was a tree sprouting from the earth, one of the trees in the thicket. His 2 feet were roots, his 2 arms were branches. If his flesh were cut, tree sap might flow instead of blood. He could fully guess the subtle words exchanged by the silently standing trees, the meaning of the nodding branches, and the whispering inner thoughts of the leaves, as if he were a plant in the grove. He could clearly translate the customs and secrets of the trees, rejoicing when the sun shone, frolicking when the wind blew, and frowning when the weather was cloudy. His body was a tree. Suddenly feeling a surge of strength, Joong-sil leaped to his feet. Strength spread through his stretched limbs, making him feel as though he could soar straight into the sky. With nowhere to direct this overflowing energy, he had no choice but to open his mouth wide and shout as if to make the sky ring. It was a powerful, simple voice of the mountain's spirit springing from the earth. The mountain answered, and the branches nodded. Another thing that answered the sound was a pair of pheasants that suddenly flew up flutteringly from the opposite mountainside. The 5-colored wings of the male pheasant, flying with the tail of the plump female in his beak, shone brilliantly in the clear sky. Seeing the plump pheasants, Joong-sil suddenly realized he was hungry. Remembering the deer meat he had kept by the stream in the valley below and the wild honey wrapped in fallen leaves, he picked up his sickle again. He needed to prepare at least a full load of wood before his first break so he could reach the town before the market closed, sell it, and return to the mountain before dark. Ving rested for a while. Strength remained in his arms. The rustling sound of leaves was loud in his embrace, and the clear energy felt as though it had bathed his body. How many times better was life in the mountain than in the village? Joong-sil thought he had done well to come into the mountain. Part B. There is no livelihood as profitless in the world as being a farmhand. It wasn't that they had a fight. Rather, Old Man Kim had picked a quarrel. Looking back now, it was clear he had intended to kick him out from the start. Joong-sil was chased out of the house where he had lived empty-handed for 7 years as a farmhand, holding nothing. He felt wronged, but not sorrowful. He had never received his yearly wages properly. He had never been given a decent set of clothes. On holidays, he never had a penny for amusement and always spent them bleakly. Promises of marrying him off, buying him a house, and setting up his livelihood were all empty talk. The sudden accusation that he had touched the concubine was a pre-planned extortion, and he hadn't even dared to lay a hand on such an ugly creature. Just because he bumped into the concubine, who had gone to do laundry, outside the village and walked back together with his load of wood, one in front of the other, there was no reason to be suspected. The concubine and her suspicious lover were actually elsewhere. The innocent Joong-sil ended up taking the brunt of the misplaced anger. The old man's plight, unable to control the behavior of his sly concubine and burning with anxiety in his old age, was indeed pitiful. Anticipating a more tangled future, Joong-sil decided to just leave. Yet under the vast sky, he had nowhere to go. The most familiar place was the mountain where he always went to gather wood. He remembered the feel of the thick fallen leaves, softer than straw dust. That wide world didn't seem like it would betray a person. Carrying only an empty A-frame carrier, he entered the mountain. It was also a test to see how long he could endure in there. It was a mountain gorge deeply removed from villages and people. The mountain ridge was broad, the sunny spots received good sunlight, a stream flowed in the valley, and tree fruits grew abundantly by the stream. He had often taken naps in the sunny spots after coming to gather wood. He would build a fire by the stream and roast corn cobs picked from the fields. He filled his stomach with akebia found in the bushes and withered wild crab apples and hawthorns hanging on the branches. The bed he made by gathering leaves and burrowing deep inside wasn't too cold either. The next day, wandering the mountain, he fortunately found a beehive hanging low on a branch. He smoked the bees away with tobacco smoke and neatly took out the hive. It was filled with clear honey. It seemed humans were meant to survive. Even a little honey was enough to stave off hunger. It became his nourishment for several days. The night before last, when the honey hadn't even run out, a forest fire was seen on the deep mountain opposite. Crimson flames, like crepe myrtle, rose closely in the darkness. It had started burning during the day and was only noticed as night fell. It looked like it was slowly dissipating like mulberry leaves being eaten by silkworms, but in reality it was burning fiercely in one spot. The flames, darting like the tips of a demon's tongue, were incredibly beautiful. More beautiful and grand than the flowers under the fence, than silk, than a rainbow, than a coxcomb. Joong-sil, inexplicably excited, picked up a stick, followed the mountain ridge, crossed the valley, and was drawn to the burning place. It was quite far, contrary to how close it looked. The fire spread from ridge to ridge and burned down into the valley. The heat radiating fiercely prevented him from getting close. It was swelteringly hot. Tree roots popped loudly and the ground rang. The smooth birch trees had fire blooming on every branch, turning into fide, reed trees like coral reefs. It was a pity that everything was burning in vain. Joong-sil, unable to do anything, just swung his stick uselessly and circled the edge of the fire. The fire was beyond his power. However, his trip definitely paid off. He obtained a roasted deer. The deer, unable to break through the ring of fire, had run in circles in the mountain valley and eventually met its fiery end. Of course, when he got it, it was dawn and the fire had almost burned out, but the lonely beast was very pitiful. Still, since it was already dead meat, Joong-sil carried it back to his mountain. He comfortably rationalized that it was God's will to save a human. It became abundant food for several days. However, there was one thing he missed. A salty taste, salt. He didn't miss people, but he missed salt. His mind yearned only for the thought of obtaining it. Part C. He packed a load of wood as much as his strength allowed. Walking diligently for long miles, sweat soaked his back. With each step, the load of wood swayed heavily forward. He barely made it before the market closed. Never had his heart been as joyful as the day he sold the wood. Never had his heart been as joyful as the day he bought the goods. it was because they were truly necessary items. With the money from selling wood, Joong-sil bought a large measure of potatoes, a measure of millet, salt, and a pot. He thought this would be enough for his solitary life in the mountain. He also thought it wouldn't matter if he lacked clothes as long as he could sustain his life. His load on the way back was lighter than when he came. The noisy arguing in the back room of the tavern was the same as before. The strange thing was that such town life didn't appeal to his heart at all. The gaunt faces of the people were not particularly something he missed. Why did he miss the mountain so much? He doubted his biased mind, but there was no particular reason. He just liked the sunny spots, the birch trees caught his eye, and the oak leaves drew his heart. Perhaps he was born to live in the mountain his entire life. There was no need to ask about Old Man Kim's subsequent news, but he happened to catch a phrase from Mr. Park, whom he met on the street. The sick, ugly concubine finally deceived Old Man Kim's eyes and ran away with Clerk Choi. They were searching for her whereabouts, but it was still a mystery. The image of the 60-year-old man, unable to sleep and grumbling in his reception room, came to his mind pitifully. He thought the old man would regret kicking out his innocent farmhand. However, Joong-sil naturally had no intention of going back to live there, nor did he want to have the kindness to comfort the old man. He only felt that town life was even more cluttered. The evening path heading back to the mountain felt much more refreshing. Part D. By the time he finished the dinner, he clumsily cooked in the pot by the stream. The night had grown quite dark. Stars thickly studded the deep sky, and a crescent moon snared the tree branches. Birds had roosted, the wind had died down, and only the stream water breathed with a babbling sound. The dark mountain ridge was a sleeping ox. The embers popped. The smell of burning leaves wrapped around his body, giving off a savory scent. Warming himself by the fire and smoking tobacco, his body felt toasty. His mind was fully satisfied, with nothing more to desire. One desire did spring up. Cooking rice was not a job for a grown man. A man should rightly plow the fields and gather wood. If he were to marry, there was no better bride than Young-yeo from the neighboring house. He thought he had no choice but to bring Young-yeo and entrust her with the cooking. Just thinking about Young-yeo brought him joy. His plans unspooled one after another. He would cut down thick trees, chop them into logs with the bark still on, and stack them in a sunny spot to build a neat, single-room hut. He planned to clear the broad mountainside, to make a field and plant potatoes and oats, starting in the spring. He would build a pen in the front yard and raise goats, pigs, and chickens. If he caught a live deer in the mountain, he would raise it in the pen. While Young-yeo did the housework, he would tend the fields and gather wood. And if they had a child, the child would grow as strong as an ox and as sturdy as the mountain. If Young-yeo refused to listen, he would go down in the middle of the night and secretly carry her off on his back. Once she entered the mountain, there would be nothing she could do. The fire almost faded away, and the sound of the water became even clearer. The stars blinked dizzily. The moon hung on a different branch. As he extinguished the remaining embers by rubbing them with his foot, the valley felt even more desolate. In the mountain, one couldn't even tell what time it was. Not knowing whether it was early or late, he headed toward his bed of leaves beneath the trees. He buried his whole body in the fallen leaves piled up thickly like a haystack, leaving only his face peeking out. His body gradually warmed up. The stars in the sky seemed to draw near and then recede, as if they would pour down on his face. 1 star, 1 me, 2 stars, 2 me, 3 stars, 3 me. Before he knew it, he was counting the stars. When his eyes blurred, his mouth mixed up and the count went wrong, he would raise his voice and start counting again from the beginning. 1 star, 1 me, 2 stars, 2 me, 3 stars, 3 me. While counting, Joong-sil felt his own body becoming a star itself. 1 star, 1 me, 2 stars, 2 me. Just as Joong-sil melted into the starlight, may you too drift into a boundless, peaceful slumber. Let the gentle breathing of the ancient mountain carry you through the night. Rest well and sweet dreams.